Good afternoon. It is the 1st of June 2024, and this podcast is on Paradigm, a sculpture made specifically for World Expo 88. 100-foot high, the main sculpture. It was sat at Expo 88 a little bit higher because it was on a plinth. And this podcast deals with 12 years of history. And so let's immediately dive in and hear John McGregor, the chairman of the 25th anniversary, launch a petition to save Paradigm.
A witness to today's press release, which we're releasing today, Friday, 11th of May 2012. Today we have launched on change.org a petition to Councillor Graham Quirk, Lord Mayor of Brisbane, to reside and rededicate Paradigm for the 25th anniversary in 2013 next year. Paradigm launched the highly successful career of Jon Barlow Hudson, lead sculptor at the Beijing Olympics 2008, a career high point 20 years after Expo 88, making Jon Barlow Hudson a household name in China. And Expo 88, of course, launched Brisbane onto the world stage 6 years after the equally successful Brisbane Commonwealth Games. The relocation of the Japanese gardens from the Japan Pavilion at Expo to the Mount Coot Botanic Gardens gave the gardens an international dimension, and the magic that was Expo 88 was largely because of the effort and charisma of Chair and CEO of Expo, Salou Edwards. So correspondingly, I would like to dedicate the outcome of this petition to Salou.
Now, what happened immediately after that petition was that the public interest in Paradigm was piqued, and that led to Jon Barlow Hudson agreeing to express post over a very valuable package of information. But before we get to the unpacking of that by Bob Minigan, the General Manager of World Expo 88, let's just hear Jon Barlow Hudson talk about his sculpture Paradigm.
Do you just want to run us through the conceptualization of the paradigm as demonstrated by the model?
This is a little poster board maquette, like virtually the same that I started with originally.
Mm-hmm. You might want to put that down. It's flashing.
Yeah. When I made this, I also had tubes coming out of some of the holes.
Yeah.
In a spiral, creating a spiral.
Oh, okay. Yep.
And that's where the DNA reference comes from. So when I originally created it, it was only about, not much bigger than this one, about 12 or 16 inches. And it was the photograph of that John Truscott asked if I could build it 50 or 100 feet high. And I hadn't really thought of that to that point. So I was happy to say yes, of course.
You were obviously a person who thought big, had big visions.
Yeah. So I made this stainless steel maquette of just 4 sections of the 100-foot piece.
Mm.
I can't remember how many sections there are, something like 50 or I just can't remember. But I only need this much just to get a feeling for it.
Yep.
And to have to photograph and show and that sort of thing. I did make a poster board, a full-length poster board maquette, like 1 inch per foot. So I did have a 100-inch high poster board sculpture to get a feeling for what that meant and how to determine the sections.
Yeah.
It had to be built in sections. I think there were 13-foot sections. The last one, the topmost, is 18 feet. So it ended up, there are 7 sections, each 13 feet high. And then you build the first section, and you lay it down and start the second section, and then make it, lay it down, start the third section, take it off and build it. So it was a step-by-step leapfrog sort of construction process.
So it all fits together and it all has its internal strength.
Yeah, each piece is bolted to the next, and there's an internal structure, just like in a building. We never had the whole thing bolted together in the factory. We only did each one following the next.
Yeah.
So I was very pleased to see that they had installed it before I got there, and it was actually straight as an arrow. When I climbed up to the top and looked down and sighted down along the edges, it was all in alignment, just as straight as an arrow.
Well, hopefully when it goes back up again, it will be exactly the same.
It should. No reason for it not to be.
Let's hope so. So we'll just touch on it. Actually, you've just couriered to me all, and as an incredibly generous gesture, all the original documentation for Paradigm, of which part of that I'm taking off to an engineer for him to cast his eye over the paperwork, and then we're going to, and I'm hoping to have Bob Minigan actually on your behalf take it into the John Oxley Library. I don't know if you remember Bob Minigan. Did you meet him, the CEO? Familiar. Well, he was the CEO of Expo.
I probably wouldn't have. He would have been too busy.
Probably, yeah, I'd say so.
But he would have been very busy.
Yeah, he's extraordinary. I've spoken to him a few times. An incredibly nice gentleman. And tomorrow morning, I'm actually doing a YouTube with a relation of his, Steve Minigan. Anyway, we digress and getting away from the topic. Where did the concept of putting the lights inside come from? Because that's also another interesting part of the creative process.
I don't recall if I don't think I suggested it. I think it was actually John Truscott, because he was, a really creative theatrical artist, and he wanted lots of light, color, and art. So that's why you have so many sculptures and murals and that sort of thing. And the lighting was a big part of his design view for Expo. So any opportunity he could have, like the blue line under the monorail and that sort of thing, he looked for every opportunity, and he saw this, and I'm sure immediately told his lighting guys to figure out what best to put in there to take advantage of it. So they used airplane landing lights, 66 of them mounted inside the tube.
Obviously, when electricity was a darn sight cheaper than what it is today.
Yeah, I was a quarter mile. I remember being a quarter mile away from the sculpture, and they turned on those lights full bore, and it was, I could feel them hot. They were so strong.
I bet you could. Funny enough, talking about the blue neon, one of the fellows that's given me a hand, come across the actual plaque where Bob Minigan switched on the blue neon, and I made a small YouTube of picking it up and taking it into the John Oxley Library, where you've said that you'd like your paperwork to go, and so it's a small world. There you go. You mention it unexpectedly, and I can connect that up in my YouTube plugs.
This is one piece, and we cut out the hole and then bent it, and then we had all these bent pieces and some half pieces, and they're all welded together at every corner, and all those welds had to be ground down to create a clean corner, and then the outside surface was surfaced with grinding cup wheels to texture it so it would reflect the light. So it was a huge job. Here's a shot with the lights, like early evening with some of the lights on. I'm not that good a photographer, so I didn't do a very good job.
Big slides, wouldn't they?
These are off of slides, yeah. I didn't have digital back then. Yeah, different world. This is the Queensland Art Gallery in the background, and this is the base, which looks about a meter, roughly, cement base. Here's site, if you remember the expo site.
How long did they leave that there?
6 months. It was a beautiful expo. The creative director was John Truscott from Melbourne. He was a theater designer. He had done a number of movies and certainly lots of theater, and so he was, you know, like a painter. So expo site was very visually beautiful. Had a lot of lights. He was really into light and artwork and murals and all the figures. So I think he put together a particularly good expo. Just another view. This is, I climbed to the top and shot looking down. So the edges, they all lined up. It was, I'm amazed that we did such a good job. It was straight.
So it was made in sections in the States and then shipped over?
7 sections.
Wow.
Let's see if I have a site. Well, here are the pieces under the bridge.
Is this like now?
Well,
Recent photo?
12 months ago,
yeah.
Oh, okay.
not longer.
Each one of these is 13 feet high. And so we started the first one, built up to 13 feet, and we'd lay it down, start the next one off of that, get it started, then take it off and build up, lay it down, start the next one, build up, and so on. The topmost piece was 18 feet, but it's probably the lightest because it's thinner, slightly thinner material in the internal structure.
So Jon Barlow Hudson very generously sent over a package of information that was on the 22nd of January 2013 admitted into the collection of the John Oxley Library, Heritage Library, and the Arts Minister of the day, Ian Walker, actually accepted it at a personal meeting, which I, for some unknown reason, didn't record, which is really dumb. But anyway, let's hear Bob Minikin talk about the collection, but more importantly, hear Bob Minikin talk about why Expo 88 was special in World Expos.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the great features of Expo 88 was that it was really 2 expos. It was a daytime expo and a night expo, and that is unusual because generally expos have been held in the summer in areas that would say you've got not really a nighttime expo, and Brisbane was unique in that extent. And this is a classic example of something that was great during the day, but it was absolutely spectacular at night. And
It really came to life.
it was. That was what made it. So we've got the drawings here. These look very
Yeah. That would be mean of me to do that to you, Steve. I won't do that.
These look like very engineering type drawings. Yes, exciting things like foundations, but they are certainly the information that would be required for somebody that was looking to erect it, and it would be great to see, obviously,
The
that come back
paradigm,
to life again.
the paradigm has a particular problem in its rebirthing. Because it is so singularly high and because it is so singularly narrow, everywhere where the council has looked at it, except one, and that was at Kangaroo Point Cliffs, which is quite solid. But unfortunately, the then Premier didn't think it matched into her new vision of Brisbane, rather than a recycled vision of Brisbane. So even though it was fellow travellers from our own party were pushing it, it didn't get accepted at that particular location. However, hopefully, as we just identified, this core piece of information which Jon Barlow Hudson has so generously offered to the people of Queensland, because Expo is a Queensland event, it's not just a Brisbane event, will certainly help in its reciting. It's just such an amazing gift, and we'll be doing a lot of
Okay, so as we march on, I think this is a suitable time to just have a look at a little snippet of information as to the 35th anniversary gift by Jon Barlow Hudson to the people of Queensland, which has been made by the woodworkers of Blackbutt, but a very special, unique piece of paradigm that's been incorporated. So, today's event is the dropping off of the paradigm lectern. So let's just hear now from David Hinchcliffe, who was a former Brisbane City Council councillor. In fact, he ended up being deputy mayor in the first Newman administration. David is an artist in his own right, now very successful artist, effectively world famous, aren't you, David? Now, he has a very special relationship with paradigm, and you're going to hear him talk about it. You'll also hear him right at the very end of this podcast give, I think, a very suitable concluding comment. So let's hear David.
So, you know, it would be such a great triumph to have both the fortitude and the money and the right site for that sculpture to be back up in place. I think for the last 20 years, every year I've had a phone call or an email from Jon Barlow Hudson. And every year I've said, look, we looked at this site and it wasn't right, we did that and we did this, and I just feel terrible.
He is a character, and he's very persistent, but
good on him, so he should be. This was one of his best sculptures ever. And
well, it's interesting. He is such a successful, or has had such a successful career in China now, and it's it's as I said to Graham, the little man, it'll be a Chinese tourist attraction, and he just shakes his head and doesn't quite believe it. But we'll get.
Now, the next part of the podcast is going to be Jon Barlow Hudson talking a little bit about his career, a little bit about branding a city with sculpture. I think this is a very important segment of the podcast, and I hope you enjoy it. But stick around, because there's a lot more in this 12-year history that we're marching through quite quickly at the present stage, but maybe not quite as quickly after it's all knitted together.
We spoke about the other day, the number of commissions you've managed to get in China, and I assume that where the Chinese institutions and city governments and provinces are using your artwork is basically in a branding method or methodology, as well as recognising beauty.
Yes. I have, for example, the 3 sculptures in Beijing. The one for the Olympics. The Olympics illustrates that it's a cultural event by having sculpture and paintings and that sort of thing all around the city in the parks. Another piece in Beijing was for the 30-year anniversary celebration of the peace détente between the U.S. and China.
And I really do like that piece. That's quite significant.
Thank you, Peter. That's in a park very close to Cloud and Rain. So that's a celebratory memorial sort of public sculpture in a public park. And then the third piece is on the campus of Tsinghua University, and that was for the 100th anniversary of the university, founding of the university. So that's a sort of memorial, celebratory branding sculpture. And that's fairly similar throughout China with my other sculptures.
Yeah, I was very impressed by the universality of the spread of your sculptures throughout China. I did say to the Lord Mayor a couple of weeks ago that I thought you were like the Coca-Cola of sculpture in China. I don't think he quite got the connection, but anyway. So then just leading on, Paradigm, which is not been unfortunately re-erected in Brisbane, but is now on the radar, I'm assuming, through the work that we're both doing. That was one of the ones that first had a computer involvement in its design and makeup, and then also then had a computer relationship in relation to the way that it functioned as a piece of artwork.
That's right. The structural engineer initially designed it in his head with his figures, the sort of the traditional way. But then he got thinking that he better check it because it's such a big piece. And at that time, they didn't normally use computers. So he went to he was in the university, and he asked the university computer department to program it in, which, it's that thick.
Yeah, they would have used cards, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's all paper. It's
Yeah.
It's really a huge amount of information. And they determined that his initial design had 48 feet of deflection, so he had to redesign the interior structure. So fortunately, we had computers, and that corrected the issue. And then later on at Expo, the Expo folks installed the landing lights, 66 airplane landing lights, and they were computer sequenced to create different patterns of light for the nighttime display.
But very monochromatically, I would imagine, just
yeah,
white
I
light.
think so. With landing lights, no color. Yeah, just the landing lights.
Yeah.
They were powerful, though.
Whereas today, I assume if you're doing it or had the opportunity to restart again, would you use LEDs and reds and greens?
Exactly. Yeah, today's lighting technology is so much advanced that we could have a glorious light show in that sculpture. If we were to do it today, it could be obviously computer sequenced and programmed, and you could have just a very rich display of light for nighttime.
Stefan, the Sky Needle, which was the other piece, which was really much higher, at 88 metres, it actually, I think it was in 2004, but I could be corrected, there was a fire through the top part of it, and Stefan, the owner of it, took the opportunity to reconfigure and put in there a more modern light system. And so I think that the two together at night time would just be so spectacular and be such a great attraction for Brisbane.
It could. It would be a fabulous landmark light display. At nighttime and daytime, it would just be a powerful sculpture, landmark sculpture. Yeah, I can't. Well, I'm biased, of course, but I can't imagine how one could not want to have a 100-foot sculpture as part of your public parks.
I think it's actually 130 foot, to be honest.
Piece.
I think it's actually 130 foot.
No, it's 30 meters, which is 100 feet.
Is it? Oh, okay. I must have got that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So the yes, it's. I mean, the history of it is, one Lord Mayoralty, one Lord Mayor, leaving and another one coming, and then re-establishing priorities, and then another one leaving, and unfortunately, it's just sort of sat in the background, not quite ever making it. But I'm hoping that with the G20 coming up, that there'll be enough interest generated from the 25th anniversary to see it rise up out of the ground, so to speak.
That would be fabulous. Let's hope.
Well, we've spoken about the uniqueness of it, and I think you mentioned in a previous attempt this morning to do the YouTube that you felt that it had some parallels to the Eiffel Tower. So, I think that's possibly quite a reasonable comparison.
Granted, it's only a fraction of its height, of the tower's height, but in terms of the Eiffel Tower is synonymous with Paris, and if this sculpture were standing in a public park, it could be a comparable identifier of associated with Brisbane in that sense. So it could be, I guess you used the phrase the branding sculpture. it's a landmark. On that scale, a sculpture becomes a landmark. And so as a landmark, it becomes identified with a location, i.e. the city of Brisbane. And so one would associate that with the city. So it could be utilized for that purpose if one were interested.
Yes, I have no, to be honest, I have no idea where Sallyanne, when she acquired it back all those many years ago, had in her mind where it would be erected. I mean, I know a little bit of the story of each one of the other pieces that were put into public parks while she was controlling the purse strings, so to speak. But that one I've never actually had the opportunity to ask her, and hopefully one day I will actually get around to remembering to ask her about that.
Some folks were talking about Docklands, and then
No,
there
that
was Kangaroo.
Yeah, Kangaroo Point. Yeah. Howard Smith Wharves, I think.
So,
That was the proper name of it. Docklands is actually in Melbourne.
oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I thought there was some kind of docks there in Brisbane.
There were, yeah. It was Howard Smith Wharves.
Okay. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Jon McGregor here again from Celebrate 88 and the Foundation Expo 88 YouTube channel. We've just been here to see the unveiling of this wonderful maquette, the Jon Barlow Hudson paradigm from Expo 88, and we've had many dignitaries here, including the former Lord Mayor of Brisbane, Lord Mayor Sallyanne Atkinson, as well as chief protagonist of World Expo 88. Here, standing on my right-hand side, James McCormick, MD.
Jeanette, thank you very much, and to many distinguished guests who are here this afternoon. It's a wonderful event, this, and I'm here really wearing two hats, none of which I actually have on at the moment. The first, as Jeanette has mentioned, is I was Lord Mayor during Expo, a wonderful time for Brisbane, a very exciting time, and it's great that we have here this afternoon many people who are involved in Expo, but particularly Jim McCormack, Jon McGregor, who has carried the torch to keep Expo alive and well in all our hearts. And Brian, of course, from the Brisbane Greeters, who go around the city reminding people just exactly what we have. The other hat I wear is as the chairman of the inaugural chairman, actually, of the Museum of Brisbane, and here today with Peter Denham, who's our director. And I think it's fantastic that these two events, if you like, have actually, or issues, or whatever you call them, have actually come together. Because here on this side, we are honouring Expo and reminding people about Expo. And of course, this building today, as you know, wasn't actually here. The library was a much smaller place, but it was actually there. And to link the library and Expo and the Museum of Brisbane together is one of the reasons I think that we wanted to really make sure that the statue was on, the sculpture was on public view. And of course, the Museum of Brisbane, as you know, is at the top of City Hall, which has ceilings, and we wouldn't be able to show it to the advantage that it is shown here. So it's fantastic that we are able to lend it to you for 5 years, and if you're really nice to us, perhaps you'll be able to keep it for longer. That's enough for me. We're here for the purpose to have a look at this, for me to unveil it, and I'm told something extraordinary magic is going to happen when I give the word. Do I tug the cloth? Yes. Right?
On Jon Barlow Hudson, what are your thoughts about such an iconic piece?
Well, you know, I was in council for 25 years, and people say, what were the successes and the minuses? I have to say that one of the loose ends that hadn't been tied up was the Jon Barlow Hudson paradigm sculpture. And I feel quite bad that neither I nor successive mayors and others have been able to find a place for it and to get it into, I guess, where it belongs, which is somewhere iconic in Brisbane where it can be.
I think wherever it goes up being.
Oh, it will be iconic.
Very iconic.
Absolutely. Well, we looked at various locations. We looked at Kangaroo Point Cliffs, which are owned by the state government. The state government said no. We looked at other sites, including the Botanic Gardens. The engineers always came back with reasons why you can't do things. I think it really does require someone to cut through and say, enough of the excuses. We've got a perfectly good justification, 25 years celebration of Expo. Now is the opportunity. Oh, now is the opportunity. Shall we keep going? Now is the opportunity for us to have what is one of the best sculptures from Expo up and viewable by the public. At the moment, it's lying down on its side, looking very forlorn and forgotten in a little council depot in Windsor. I would love for Graham or anyone else with the fortitude to say, let's do it.